We are live. All right, gang. Welcome back to the soapbox. Here we are. It's going to be a fun one here. It's, for those of you that are in the CrossFit community, it's a fun weekend. The CrossFit Games are here, and unlike any other, it's end of October. We have the CrossFit Games, 10 athletes out there. So I thought it'd be fitting to talk about the importance of the CrossFit Games, what I've learned from competing, not competing, individual, team, owning affiliates, and really just my goal by the end of this podcast, hopefully anything from a games perspective and how it can relate to non-games athletes and aspiring games athletes. Maybe, I hope that you can take away a good amount from this, because a lot of questions come up when it comes to the games, and from all sorts of topics, right? And a lot of the times it's coming from people that have never been at the games, whether it is from a competition perspective or whatever it might be. And so I really want to highlight some things about the importance of, but also where we can take inspiration, but where we need to draw lines, and where we're at now compared to where we were 10 years ago. So a few things. Yes, I have glasses on, blue light glasses. I'm in on the fad. So for those of you that are watching me on YouTube, here we go. For those of you listening, I got blue light glasses. I'm in. I like it. I don't know if it's a fad or a trend, but I placebo or whatnot. I feel good, and my wife says she likes the way they look on me. So just like my hair, I'll listen to her when it comes to this. So that's that. We'll move on. So the games. The games is a focal point. It's an inspiration to so many. It's a professional sport. We watch professional sports. We grow up with professional sports. What separates CrossFit from other professional sports is that you can actually play the game with them. You can throw a football in your backyard, but you're very rarely going to be able to throw a football with an NFL quarterback. You could go to a gym and literally work out next to or with a games athlete, do the same workout if it's scaled appropriately, right? We can do, in quotations, the same workout that we see in the games. And so there's this beauty, there's this palatability, there's this ability to almost touch and feel the games that makes it so sexy and so cool. Watching these athletes do pull-ups and thrusters and run, you're like, well, I can do that. And that's what's cool about it, because the reality is most of us can't. But you have this inkling that, I can do that. And I think that's really, really special and really powerful when it comes to inspiration and when it comes to getting people into the sport. I think a lot of affiliate owners really struggled with this early on. CrossFit's too much about the games. CrossFit's too much about the games. But the reality is, I only can do so much at my gym to let people know what CrossFit is, right? So when people watched, when people watched on ESPN, they're going to see that and be like, wow, I can't do that. And maybe they're right. But at the very least, they're seeing CrossFit. They're getting exposed to a methodology. They're getting exposed to a name, getting exposed to essentially, if your name is CrossFit 123 and they see that brand, and they're like, oh, well, I can go to a CrossFit gym down the road. So I definitely think that there's so much value to that from the perspective of, these are our marquee athletes. These are the people that we're seeing on TV. Yes, most of our athletes in our gym will never get to that level, look and perform that way. But it's no different where it's the entry point. Because now from there, people may raise a question, they might raise an eyebrow, they might start thinking about it. It's there, it's in front of them. Whereas if they never have the opportunity to learn, hear about CrossFit, to go, in any way, and then they never go see it, then it doesn't matter. And I think that's really important, is that you need a spectacle. And I love you at your gyms, but your gym is not the spectacle. I love what you're doing and changing the world at your gym, but it's not the spectacle. The games are. And your feelings don't matter about that. What matters are ratings. What matters are who's watching, what people want to watch. And the reality is they want to watch games. And not only that, here's another thing. That's why this year is so cool. For those of you that aren't aware, there's literally only 5 men and 5 women out there competing. for 3 days. And normally there would be 40, right, of the fittest. Now there's 5. Literally, the fittest people in the world just throwing down on workouts all weekend. It's really cool. But even at the CrossFit Games, no one wanted to watch the first heat, which was the bottom 10 of the fittest in the world. People wanted to watch the last heat, which was the best, the contenders, right? So even within that, so I think that this is really, special, is that you get to see this and kind of witness really fun stuff. But again, it also desensitizes you a little bit. Like, wow, look how fit these people are. Or, oh, that person finished last. Yeah, they finished 5th. Yeah, of course it'd be different if the field was deeper, but still, like, it's not awful. So I do think that that's the really, really one thing I love about the games, is that I would have never have found CrossFit without the games. And I say this because a lot of people like, it's not, CrossFit's not about the games. CrossFit's not about the games. What's more important is this or that. And I say, yes, and of course we know the power of what we're doing at affiliates. Of course we know all that. But I will tell you this. CrossFit is not where we are today without the games. Because so many of the people that are leading our community were in some point, in some way, inspired by the games. From a competition perspective, from an athletic perspective, from a coaching perspective, whatever it might be. And they are a huge part of our community. I just think about, when I found CrossFit, I literally found the movie Every Second Counts. I found the program to the CrossFit Games in 2008-09. And I was like, I'm going to go to compete in 2010. And then I started to change over my methodology of training for myself and then my client, and then the rest is history. And I just think to myself, if the games didn't exist, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have just been, if CrossFit was just a training program, I don't think I would have been able to, I wouldn't have been able to find it that much. And I wouldn't have been inspired, to be honest with you, because at the point in my life, that wasn't something that was inspirational to me. Now, CrossFit's much bigger than it was 10 years ago, but understand that the games are still so important because we want to reach more people. We're bigger, therefore, we still have this amazing stuff, and we can tell really cool stories about what we're doing at the gyms and within our community, but the games, man, special. Because what we are doing at the CrossFit Games is pushing the thresholds of human performance. And that is very, very powerful. And that's something that inspires a lot of people, but also it pushes the threshold of what CrossFit can do. And that's what a lot of people forget about the CrossFit Games, is that the games it's really a test, but it's also a showcase of what CrossFit has done at its peak, at its pinnacle. It is not necessarily a test of what we should be doing at our gym. And what I mean by that is, it's very easy to make the mistake of these athletes are doing this, we should do that. No. Let's take best practices, yes, but remember, our goals for 99.9% of the CrossFit community is relatively simple. I want to look good naked. I want functional competency. I want to be able to really do any task life throws my way. Awesome. CrossFit competitors, when I was competing, the goal was to win. I'd fight through injury, I'd work out with injuries, I'd work through pain, I'd be uncomfortable, whatever it might be, the purpose was and the goal was the same and simple, to win. And you push through all of that because in any competitive sport, that's what you do. And quite honestly, you'd ask any competitor what they're going to do differently when they stop competing, they're going to work out a lot less, right? They're going to train a lot less, they're going to practice a lot less. And it's the same thing with CrossFit. And I think that's important, is that, and this is where we start to see a lot of people get greedy, and I think this is the biggest mistake, and I think the biggest peril that the CrossFit Games has indirectly led to affiliates, and I don't blame the CrossFit Games, I'm blaming the affiliate owners, I blame coaches, is that overlaying that more is better, that the only way to get strong is to follow a lifting program, that, that we need to do all these different parts and pieces in order to get fit because that's what we see the best do, whereas yes, what we're forgetting is the time of training, the commitment. There's so many other things. And also that skill development and practicing for the best athletes looks a lot different for them than it does you, right? So when you see a top games athlete training and then you see them doing things, you're like, wow, that's another workout. But for them, it might be skill, it might be practice. And for 99% of people, you overlay that onto them. That's literally going through a specific warm-up in a class, learning how to air squat, pushing PVC pipe through, through space, working on your kip swing, working on flexibility, whatever it might be, right? Because we also only have an hour. And I don't, and so another thing is that I think that what I love about the games is that it also shows, and what it's starting to show more is how long it takes to get there. And like, you look at like Matt Frazier, there's a rookie now, Medeiros, but like, he's been doing CrossFit for like his whole life since he was a kid at a gym at Fort Vancouver, where literally they've been going to the games their whole tenure there. And I know the guy that runs the gym is, he's a great guy, but like, they just do CrossFit, right? But it takes a long time to build that base. So like, I think that if you pull back, what I love about it is if you pull back what best practices can you take, the people that are the best at CrossFit do CrossFit. Now, the people that are the sexiest maybe on Instagram might have like, oh, I follow this lifting program or this, blah, blah, blah. But like, I go back to Rich, and again, Matt doesn't release a lot about his training, but just, what I do know is he does a lot of CrossFit, right? And works on his weaknesses. It's no different than, Rich did when he was at the top of the individual and team game, is that like a lot of CrossFit. And so pull that down. And what can we take from our affiliates is that, oh, hey, we should just be doing CrossFit. And I think it's just really, really special and cool that like, and Dave always says this, like, know your history. You want to be good at the CrossFit Games, you should be doing a lot of CrossFit. And that's why I love the CrossFit Games, because it does highlight that. And I think it's easy for to quickly and ignorantly kind of overlay like, oh, we need to do this or need to do that, because you see games workouts or things that athletes struggle with. But remember, it's a season. Look up at the Open and the regionals and the games and all those other steps. Like, it's really cool. I mean, you look at the games this year, the online qualifier, there's a handstand hold. Anyone that was shocked by that clearly doesn't know their history of that, how important handstands and holds. I mean, it's in world-class fitness in 100 words, like flips, splits, holds, pirouettes, presses to handstands. This is what is in world-class fitness in 100 words that really is the foundation of our program, right? Eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar, keep intake levels, support exercise and not body fat, practice and train the fundamental lifts, press, deadlift, squat, clean and jerk and snatch, so on and so forth. But again, these are things, and you're like, oh, well, that's, and you look at the CrossFit Games, there it is, right? And then you look at the Games athletes that have been around a long time, your veterans have shown consistency. They've cleaned up their diet. They've worked on their position. They've worked on their flexibility. These are all things that we should be overlaying to our affiliate. Not what they do, but the distilled down best practices. I think that's really special. I love the Games because it does push us to be better. Right? It does push us to be better people. I love, like, when you watch people do, I mean, how many guys out there are inspired by what they're doing? It is amazing when you see them doing something, you're like, that didn't look that hard, but then you realize that they're the best, right? It's no different when you watch any sport, like, oh, it just shot a basket, right? That looked not hard, and you can't even, get close to what that is. It's impressive to watch the best. It really is. And dovetailing that nicely is that's what people want to watch and see. And I also like it because in this day where we have so many snowflakes, so many people just like, and people have too many feelings when it comes to performance. I love the CrossFit Games because it's not, and this is why I love the Games, is that like, I never really understood people that talk about like, oh, like we need more representation here. It's like, no matter how good you are, it's like the best in the world go. It's all about your performance. It's objective, and I love objective tests. I had my best and worst moments emotionally competing because it was me and the competition and my result, and things I'll never forget. When winning events at regionals, going to the CrossFit Games, walking out and completing something, failing repetitions on heavy DT, coming in third in the stadium, and second or third in Murph. These are things that you'll never forget. Snatching my PR weight, like these are so cool. And if I got beat, I got beat. If I won, I beat other people. And that's what's so special about it. It's such a raw competition. And it's really, really special. So I think that's really important for people to understand, is that, yeah, like in this day and age where like we need to give so many consolation prizes at the apex, at the Games, no one cares about you, your feelings, what you think. It's about your results. And I think that's really important to have those types of events. So I think the CrossFit Games are really, really cool from that perspective. And for our younger generation, I think that it gives, this is hard for me, right? Because I think that competing at the CrossFit Games is like a professional sport now. It's like, I want to play in the NBA, I want to play in the NFL, I want to go compete at the CrossFit Games. It's like, that's a tough one, right? Because it's a, and I saw this quote, I think it was from Hinch. I was like, a coach should never cast doubt into their athlete. And I think that's really important. So how do you develop that tenacity, but also that realistic understanding of where they are? And I think the CrossFit Games gives a lot of our younger generation something to aspire to. And we as coaches need to figure out how to balance that, right? Yes, I love this goal. Let's get there. But also making sure that we are, being smart and aware of the rest of our life. I think that the con to that is that you see a lot of people, make so many sacrifices, but haven't been realistic with themselves, their abilities, or other things. So, and I think that's really hard. I don't know if I know the right answer. It's like, if a 14-year-old says, I want to go compete at the CrossFit Games, what should I do right now? It's like, that's a really loaded question coming from someone that's competed for 10 years, knowing how you feel, knowing how hard the field is, knowing the sacrifice that you have to make. Can you still go to school and compete? I think so. I mean, Matt did it, and a lot of other people did it, Vellner. So it's like, I don't, and I think that you look at some of the best, they do have a good amount of dedication, but also throughout the beginning of their careers, they always had other things going. And I think that's important. They're smart, and like same thing with Rich is like, he's got an empire now, but like he was building that while he was competing. And everyone has their own different path, but I think that's really important is that if you become a one-trick pony, I don't know if that's the right way to do it, and it's like, well, look at what these athletes are doing now, but look at the foundation they laid in the beginning. I think that's really important. So there's a pro and a con to that. I think it can really inspire the younger generation, but it also, we need to be careful of not sucking them in and altering their life course for the worse. It should bring them up, teach you work ethic, passion, purpose, all of these things, overcoming hardship, triumph. Yes, training for something like that is so special, but it shouldn't become something that is a suck or a detriment for you or others around you. And I think on the other side, like my master's athletes, and for my masters out there, it's like, I struggle with masters athletes a lot because I see masters athletes get injured a lot. And I think that masters athletes really need to figure out, like, what are your goals? What do you want? Because the reality is, the older you get, things change. And, CrossFit is a really powerful tool. And the minute you go from CrossFit as a methodology to sustained functional competence, health, life, longevity, and then you want to go to compete, like you're going to be sacrificing some things. So my challenge is like, well, where are you at in life? What are your responsibilities? Like when you're a kid, it's a little different, right? Like, your responsibilities are much lower. You can be much more selfish, but as you get older, you can't. Family, job, things like that, people rely on you. So, and I obviously I'm 33. I'm not a master's athlete, but I do have a child, and my life has changed a lot in 10 years. So I definitely think about those things more than I did 10 years ago. So I think that's another challenge for my master's athletes, but again, not dissuading them, but really just challenging. What are you doing and why? I think that people pushing the base, it's like, the way I look at it is like, I think about it like, hey, I'm doing this. Oh, hey, I'm good enough to compete. I should do it. As opposed to, I'm going to make it my life goal to compete. I think that's the right approach for our masters athletes. Quality of movement should trump fast and load, and because over time you're going to get better. What's the rush? And I think those are some things that can really help those masters athletes. So those are the things that come to my mind when it comes to competing. Do I think competing in the CrossFit Games is healthy? I don't, but I also don't think that's a problem. I think that when you go to compete, you go to win. You make huge sacrifices emotionally, psychologically, socially, and physically. But it's nothing you come back from. It's like I talk to Olympians that could barely walk after the Olympics. You talk to NFL players that couldn't walk after games, but they're fine now. They got banged. They're banged up and they have bruises, but many of them wouldn't trade that for the world because of the moment they were in. Maybe hindsight's 2020, but they wouldn't be like, oh, I would not do that again. And you might hear that, but I think the norm is I would 100% do that again. And same thing with me. I'm pretty banged up. It's like my wrist, my hip, things like that, but I still love it, and I still loved every second of it, and it shaped who I am. So, I think that's the piece is like, don't confuse the games with what we're doing at the affiliate level from that perspective either. I've been a part of 4 gyms, owning, directly operating, running, managing, and we've been one of the least competitive membership bases. We've been, we've went to games and stuff like that, but our It's always been about fitness and fun. And if you want to work out more, heck yeah, we'll take care of you. But it's never about competition. It's never about bigger, faster, stronger, more. It's about fitness. It's about fun. And, and then people will navigate in and out of that competitive world, but it's a very short window for most. And because it's usually an exhibition, and that period of your life where you can dedicate a little more time is usually very short for them. But what's not short is their life, and we want to make sure we curate that journey as well. So that's what I got from the games perspective. 20 minutes going for a long time about this, but that's kind of where I'm at. Kind of just a CrossFit Games dump of information, thoughts, experiences. Hopefully you found that insightful. All right, gang. We'll see you.